welcome to everybody who has come to join us for this Facebook Live. This is the first one that I've ever done. So I'm Danyah Miller. I'm Artistic Director of Wizard Presents Theatre Company, and I am absolutely delighted to be sharing an In Conversation series, which is related to our unique and multimedia project, which we've just launched, the Secret Garden Experience, which is based on the much loved classic by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And this project is audio, a gift box, which you get through the post, which is rather sumptuous and glorious, and then also digital. So you can enjoy it at home, in nature, and online. And the reason for the In Conversation series was that we wanted to highlight some of the aspects and themes of the story which might be interesting to an adult audience. And these include education, emotional well-being, empire. And for this particular evening, we're going to be talking about environment and the healing power of nature, which obviously goes right the way through the whole book. In fact, the whole book it's named The Secret Garden for a reason. This is the third in the series of these In Conversations, and they go out every Thursday night on our Facebook page at 6:30. I am completely thrilled and delighted to be joined this evening by Professor Alistair Griffiths, who is the RHS Director of Science and Collections. And Alistair has recently co-authored a book with Matt Keatley, and it's called, I love this, Your Wellbeing Garden, How to Make Your Garden Good for You, which is about the scientific evidence behind the wellbeing benefits of gardening. So welcome, Alistair. Thank you for taking time out of a very busy week, because you're actually crazy busy this week, aren't you?
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me. It's always good to sort of talk about wellbeing. Yes, it's Hampton Court Flower Show, and it is this week, and we've just opened the new science centre at Wisley, the new home of gardening science. So it's been very busy, but it's just nice. Certainly in this last week, just to be able to go and see plants, people in a place, and we've had a bit of sunshine. It's rained a lot, but it's been sunny as well. But yeah, lots of well-being going on around Hampton Court.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I'm really fascinated to talk to you and to share something that you shared with a little glimpse with me quite recently when we first spoke, and I just thought it was so relevant to the Secret Garden. So I think, without any further ado, I would love you to share with us some of your findings, and then maybe afterwards what we can do is have a little bit of a conversation and then throw it open to people to ask us questions. So if you have any questions whilst Alistair's sharing his knowledge and wisdom with us, please put them in the comments and we will answer as many as we possibly can. And then we're going to aim to finish by about 7:15. So please, Alistair, over to you.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna share my screen.
Great.
And share the presentation.
Lovely.
Great. Can you see that? Okay.
Perfect. I can see it really well, and I think, yep, yes. Although we can see other sections. That's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. Fabulous. Okay. So what I thought I'd share with you is something that's certainly linked to the sort of Secret Garden, about the revelation of nature, and perhaps give you an insight to some of the scientific evidence that we've discovered, myself and other scientists throughout the UK, around why is it that gardening is around the well-gardened mind, body, and soul. So, I mean, we've all been actively, if you're lucky enough to have a garden or some space or being able to go out in nature, we all know that this is significantly being beneficial during COVID lockdown. And there was a few studies that we did. So the RHS sent out a Mori poll during lockdown. And we asked people right at the first lockdown, has your garden or green space helped you during lockdown? And 70% said, yes, it's helped my mental health. And 60% said, yes, it's helped my physical health. There was also a study that was done on time use and mental health. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, 55,000 adults were asked about their time use. And what they found was that 2.5 hours of gardening a week significantly helped with mental health. But what they also found was that if you watched more than 2.5 hours of news around COVID, it significantly had an impact. So again, being outside, being in nature, being distracted is really a healing way to do it. And the fundamental reason for that is that Charles Darwin, when he first came up with the theory of evolution, said to people, look, we are animals. And he got a lot of people didn't believe him. He was disrespected for a long time. But his theory was really saying that us as species are actually very much part of the natural world. So that's why, as we garden or as we're in the natural world, that is our natural habitat. So we're animals too, and animals are very habitat dependent. So, we should give more consideration to our habitats, because our gardens are also a form of transformation in relation to what we're doing. And so I think, this whole element of preventative natural health care is quite critical. There are a whole bunch of theories around the well-gardened mind. I'll just pick two. Well, actually, I'll pick three out of here. One of them is called the stress reduction theory. And this study was done by Ulrich. And basically what happened is what he did is, in hospitals over a number of years, he measured patients who had been in operations, those with a view with nature or outside, and those with a nature of brick wall. And he found three things. First thing was they got out of hospital quicker. Second thing was they took less medication. And the third, they were less grumpy to the nurses and carers that provided you. So what Ulrich said is that there is some mechanism that when you're in nature, you're viewing nature, or you're actively engaged with it, is that it's actually having an impact and reducing the stress elements of you so that you can restore yourself, which then leads on to Kaplan, which is the attention restoration theory. And in relation to the attention restoration theory, this is really about your distraction. So if you could think about a moment where a bumblebee or a butterfly or a beautiful bird flies past, and you're on your own, and all of a sudden, or a piece of nature that you're in awe with, all of a sudden you go, oh, look, there's a butterfly. Isn't it pretty? It's fluttering around. Oh, that's great. It's going quite random. While you're doing that, your exhausted brain is going, because it's bringing you in the present, and it's also switched off all the other mechanisms other than you just being distracted by what is termed a soft fascination. The fascination of nature, it gives you the restorative potential. Final one is flow. So if you are a gardener or not a gardener, with a garden, I'm a gardener, it's a nightmare, because when I go in my garden, I lose all track of time. And again, in the garden, you see that lose track of time. And in the flow elements, I'm always being told, it's how long have you been there? Oh, I must have only been 15 minutes, but it's hours. Hours drift by, and you're doing exercise, which is good for you. But flow is quite an instrument. When you get in the flow, you're in the zone. And again, that restores your mind. Physical health is another one. So in relation to the physical health and the well-gardening body, and again, the fact that the boy was able to get out into the garden and do elements of sort of physical health and build his strength up bit by bit. This just shows you calories burned per 30 minutes linked to Harvard Medical School. You can see that digging and general gardening are very equivalent to a number of the other things around calories per person. You keep burn. So in relation to digging, you're looking at sort of 200 odd 400 per hour of burning calories. but while you're outside as well, and again, really apt in relation to the garden, because the boy hadn't been out into the sunlight. Now, sunlight, particularly sunshine, and garden in the time of sunshine, provides vitamin D, which that vitamin D then helps to build your immune system. I mean, I've been taking vitamin D tablets during the COVID time because actually that is a way of doing that. But it also keeps your bones, your teeth, your muscles healthy, regulates your immune system, and even triggers serotonin levels. But physical exercise as well has been shown to trigger those serotonin levels and help you to be happy. Now, this was a fascinating study again. So getting muddy. So in the secret garden, getting your hands dirty, doing the transformation. This study was a study that basically what they did in a small daycare children area, they had one in the city, they had one in nature, in a natural environment, and they had one with some plants in and ones where they transported plants in. And within a 28-day period, the microbes on the skin of the children had changed, and those microbes linked to their blood elements had basically changed and increased their ability to have immunity. So this is a theory called the old friends theory, in that when you play in the soil or you do it, if you're devoid of that, then you're not building up those microbes and you're not building up your elements of those things. Social health. So again, the whole family got involved in gardening, and that's what gardening's about. It brings people together through one common thread, but it fosters social interactions. It can reconnect isolated people through plants and community. It improves a sense of pride and place. And even there's been some allotments in America whereby they did some tests with vacant lots, which again, they transformed. And what you saw was that in relation to crime, was that there was reported, people went out there and used it more, and that the actual reported crime had gone down, knife crime, gun crime. So again, it brings communities together, and it brought the family together in the garden. So here are some studies that we did just briefly. One was with Exeter Peninsula Medical School, and we surveyed just under 8,000 people, and we asked them about spending time in garden. We looked at all the social economics, all the different levels of people, and what we found that those gardening or using a garden reported better health and well-being, more physical activity, and more nature visits than those that didn't. And also access to private green space helped with physical activity. This is another project that we did in Salford. So this was with Sheffield University, and this is with Lauriane Chalmin-Pugh, who is now at the RHS as our fellowship, Wellbeing Fellowship. This street here, what we did is we transformed a small area with 2 little planters and a tree. And what we did was the trees in the street to green it up. And what we found was, compared to a street without this as a control, a 6% decrease in perceived stress scale using a medical measure, which is equivalent to 8 weekly mindfulness sessions. We also took saliva samples, which measure your health curves. So a healthy curve against an unhealthy curve. And what we found at the start was that 24% of the people that were taking part had healthier cortisol curves, healthy curves, after 53% had healthy curves. So the physiology of those people had improved. This other project, so Bridgewater Garden, it's just opened in Manchester. It's an amazing new garden that the RHS have got, but they've also got a social prescribing, which is gardening for on sort of prescription. And they did a nine session, and this is Azichi who led the session. And, you know, the qualitative stuff is that, you know, it actually, I just loved every minute of it. It's done me the world of good. I'd say it saved me. So again, the link to the film is about, it did save those individuals and that family's, that life. It brought them together and brought joy. And that's the critical thing, the elements of joy of gardening. Now, another graph here just shows you the shift on those people. So before intervention, just let's focus on the low well-being. Low well-being was 42.1%, and that halved, almost halved after the intervention. So shifting people up, improving their well-being through gardening. Now, this is another study which we did on cities, and we asked people, and this was 6,000 people, 249 non-gardeners, and 5,700 gardeners, and we asked them what was the best thing about gardening for them. There was the top three things were the pleasure and enjoyment of gardening, because that pleasure and enjoyment of it brings all these other things that help in relation to health and well-being. I mean, you stick to it. The number two is the sensory stimulation. And again, you see a lot of that in the film. And then number three was the health benefits. But we also looked at a dosage response curve in relation to how often you gardened. So at the bottom, you've got never gardened, and at the top, you've got garden daily. And what you can see is that on the left-hand side, you had a 6.5% better, higher well-being, and on the right-hand side, you had a 4.2 or lower stress, perceived stress element. Now, on the mental well-being, it was similar to the effects of 7 well-being sessions in an acute psychiatric setting. So again, having a front garden or having a space to grow, be it as small as you saw within the Salford, 2 containers and a tree, can make a huge difference to people's lives. So in relation to the well-gardened mind, body and soul, you have the mind that has stress restoration, relaxation, the mindfulness, because it brings you into the present. On the body, it's physical exercise, the microbiome, chemicals that you inhale. So the Japanese do forest bathing, which is a particular chemical that you can inhale called limonene and pinene. And vitamin D, and then the soul about fostering friendships. And a lot of the garden is very much about, those other things were there, very much so, but a lot of it was about the soul, that it fosters friendships. And that's what gardening is all about. It just joins people, no matter what walk of life you are, in relation to the sharing. So that's my quick stop in relation to the evidence that we have so far.
You know, I just find it incredible that you've got this evidence now, which was so obvious to Frances Hodgson Burnett when she was writing in 1910, that for her, what she had was a young child who didn't really want to go out, didn't want to do anything. You know, when she was told by Martha, who was the servant of the big house who was looking after her, said, you know, go out into nature, go out into the garden. And she said, why would I go out? And Martha said to her, well, if you don't go out, you're going to have to stay in and there's nothing to do here. And she reluctantly goes. But in the story, it talks about how the wind starts to whip her blood and how it starts to get her breathing. And it's lovely to hear the science behind that, why it had such a powerful effect on her.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, one of the things that I always sort of caught me was the little robin. So the robin led her to the place, and it was a self of discovery. But that, in effect, you know, when I talked about attention restoration, was that she got fascinated by that robin, and then followed it and had this sense of discovery. And then there's another scientific term, which, I mean, it's odd, this, isn't it? But I mean, we do know it, but we have to prove it to people. We have to give the evidence there. Is there is something called the science of awe. And again, you know, when she discovers this place, she is in complete awe about the opportunity of doing that, but doesn't quite know what she'll do, but eventually then meets up with the gardener. And I think, you know, again, you start seeing how you get those relationships, and how you foster those relationships. And again, I think during COVID, the isolation elements is it's really nice to see how this connects people, and you completely be poles apart in where you are in your life, but you start talking about daffodils or the garden. It's a great connector. It
really is, isn't it? And I think, you know, Mary in The Secret Garden talks about, I think the robin likes me. I think that may be my first friend. So you talked about friendships and what have you. And we've just had a review from a younger theatre that came in today. It was a guy called Jay Granger who found out about the Secret Garden experience and decided that he would do it with his nan. And he went to live with his nan for a period of time, and she just lost her motivation, lost her appetite for things. And in doing this together with her, he thought maybe she'd say, no, on your bike, I'm not doing it. But he writes so eloquently about how powerful this shared experience was. And it is true, isn't it, that when you garden together, it's a very powerful connector.
It is, and I think, you know, there's something really powerful about sowing some seeds together. So again, you know, during the lockdown, me and the family, what we did is we sowed sunflowers each. What I didn't tell my family is that I got the biggest cultivar and gave them smaller ones and had a competition. I did tell them after. I was a bit mean. Mine
That's
didn't.
Naughty.
Mine still didn't get bigger. They still got bigger.
Oh, okay.
So they'll teach me. That was karma.
Yeah, absolutely was.
But you know, we sowed those seeds, and again, you know, there's an element of when it comes through. You know, I think we've probably all remember, and probably may have all done this in school, where we sowed the cress seeds, and then you get that instant the fact that life comes out of this tiny little package is so powerful. In fact, it's one of the only ways that really, you know, everyone can give life quite quickly. And nurture it, and it's right in us. It's within us and who we are. So
our DNA. Yeah. And somebody's asked, you know, how do we help people who live in urban settings to learn about the benefits of soil and gardening? And you did do one investigation around that.
I'll tell you. Oh
yeah, too. Yeah.
So the street in Salford. So it's quite an urban area, and it was, you know, I'm from around that area, and what we did, because we worked with a social housing company who helped us pick some of the sites, but me and the student knocked on the door and said, would you like a free garden? We're doing an experiment. Some of the responses weren't that polite. I'm not going to repeat what words were said, but they were very, very rude.
Yeah.
And this one individual was extremely rude. And but what was really interesting is when we actually started to put the gardens in, this guy came over to me and said, look, I'm really sorry I was rude to you. I'd actually quite like a garden. And we put that garden in, and actually was really chuffed. So I think, and what we were finding as well is once you put some of this stuff in, it became a little bit infectious. So other people would do that. Now we put that in 2017. I went back there last month, and they're still growing, and we haven't done anything else with them.
Amazing.
And they're still looking after them. But I think what we've got to do, I mean, if you look behind me, there's a green wall here. This is full of peace lilies. I do, but not everyone is lucky enough to have a garden, and we have got small spaces. And I think the line is really everybody needs to have a space to grow in this country, be it indoors or out. So I've got something here. Look, so if you're on your balcony, right, this is an amazing plant. This is called Nemisia Wisley vanilla. Now there are other vanillas, but when you smell, this has got the sweetest vanilla scent that you'll ever imagine. Now, vanilla is actually the scent of most people. Not everyone likes it, but most people like it because it's in mother's milk. And so most people like vanilla unless they've had a bad experience with it. And some people have had bad experiences.
Yeah, sure.
So what can you do in a small space? Well, you know, you can put things like lavenders in there, or you can put colours in that, you know, like in your house, when you decorate in your house, you have like a mood board. Well, I've never done a mood board, but people do mood boards, don't they? But there's no reason why you can't look at the plant choices what colours do you like, what scents do you like, and surround yourself with those elements. And you don't have to buy them, because on Facebook and on other places, there's a lot of trading of plant material. There's always surplus of allotment stuff. So getting strawberries, I think it's, you know, it's going to be very difficult. And I have tried in the past to convert someone who's completely and utterly anti-gardening. And so all I think you have to do is it's not preaching, it's helping. So providing solutions, making it easy, because often I think gardening has been made difficult. So here's another example. Okay, I'm just going to show you what I did, because I do this for like people who can't necessarily afford things. So this is an almond carton, right? So I've cut it up, and this is a sunflower, and this is called teddy bear. So this will actually grow with a little teddy bear thing, and all I've got is a bit of soil and an open thing. This will recycle afterwards. And what I've done is, this is quite. Let me just show you what I've done. Is I've put a sock in there, and there's a little irrigation system. So I've used a sports sock, half a thing, and one seed, and you can have. You can, and what you could get is you can get kids to paint this and stuff like that as well. So it doesn't have to look like almond milk.
Yes.
And by the way, there are other retailers available. So I think so I think you know, that's it's just making it easy for people to do it, I think. And yeah.
A friend of mine put an avocado stone in a jam jar with water. And they literally just got their children to put 2 pins in the avocado and let it start to grow, and it shot, and then potted it up, and it's still in the house. And it's that awe and wonder, isn't it? Yeah. I know when Mary first went into the garden, it was a den. Nobody knew about it. And at her age, which was 9, it's all about building a den, building a space. And she wanted to know what was wick, what was alive, and what wasn't. And she pulled a little bit of grass away from the pointing seeds, from the little shoots, the snowdrops and things, to help them grow. And I wonder if you go into a park, you can be in an urban area, but there are open spaces often available where you could tell stories about it, share poems and songs to encourage that love of Mother Earth and grandfather Sun, you know. We've got another lovely question. I'm just looking down, bear with me, which is Tarun saying that he feels really good when he's watching trees, greenery, particularly if he's tired. He then begins to feel a bit more refreshed. And he wonders if there's a scientific explanation behind that.
So there is some thought. Well, first of all, green is the most easiest colour for us to look at. So as a species, we're quite lazy. So when we're looking at a tree, it doesn't tax the brain a lot to look at it. Okay. But then what you have with trees, certainly particular trees, and it happens with, ferns are excellent, but trees do this as well. What you have is a mathematical thing going on here. So what humans are interested in is a bit of complexity, but not too complex to tax the mind too much, and repetition. So when you look at a tree, what you've got is a tree within a tree within a tree within a tree, because it branches and branches and branches and branches out. And that's called fractals. So similar within a fern, you'll have a fern within a fern within a fern. So you'll look at it and your brain's processing it and it's going, oh, that's a tree, that's beautiful. And then you'll start to look at the patterns, it's green, and you'll start to, because it's a sense of understanding of what it is, that brings you those sort of aspects. It will shift, because certainly shifts more for those that have learned more about those things and understanding nature more, which is why it's really important we try to reconnect people back with nature. Because I'm looking at an oak tree now. I know it can have 2,800 creatures living in that oak tree. It's the depth of understanding that makes you more, I don't know, in awe really of those things. But I think those two things, and then on top of that, what you have is noises. So there's a research that have talked about the fact that the rustling of leaves and the movement of leaves actually has a calming, restorative effect on your mind. And there's one plant which is really, actually, I was out in the nature and I was showing my wife. It's called Populus tremula, because what it does is its leaves just tremble. and then you could just look up and watch this thing do it, and it's just it's sort of it brings you into
mesmeric.
Yeah, it brings you into the now as well, which is what my mindfulness is very much about, connecting you back to the now and distracts you from all the rubbish about, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. There's a tree, isn't that amazing? And you just stare at it. It's like staring into ponds. I do that a lot.
Yeah. It's interesting. And when I share stories with people, and why I was so drawn to the Secret Garden experience is we have amazing seasons in this country. We're really lucky to go through such a wide range in our seasons, and you can share stories about the seasons, about nature with children, which then get them interested to go out and look at it. You can connect them to it so well. And we've got another question which is lovely, which is what sort of plants can you grow in your garden to invite animals back into the garden?
So there's all sorts of different types of plants, and it depends on what types of animals that you want to introduce. So there is a long list on the RHS website, which is called Plants for Pollinators. And what that's all about is plants for pollinators. So if you type in plants for pollinators, it comes up with a list of all the different types of plants that marry with different pollinators throughout the whole seasons. And that's native and non-native, because the non-native can extend the season in relation to pollinators. I mean, without a doubt, I mean, I am biased, but lavender is such a giver, because lavender will attract bees and butterflies. It's very easy to grow. It produces the scent, which is known to relax and calm. So you have those aspects. Now, it doesn't need to be huge. It could be as little as an upside down bin lid to attract. In fact, last year, so we got a dog 2 years ago, and I've got a dog bowl outside the back, and there was a frog in it. So water-wise, having some kind of water, I built a pond in lockdown. It was one of my projects to keep me sane, and this year I've got newts in it, and there's all sorts of, when it's dry and really hot, every bird comes and visits it and takes a drink. And you know what I get? It's a gift. So again, I think this is the other thing about the My Garden is there is something really good about giving to nature, but also giving to each other. And I think I get some selfish satisfaction from that. Oh, look, that little bird is getting a little drink from the pond that I've made, and I'm helping nature along. So there's those things. And then again, in relation to birds, so there's the snowberry tree, so you can get, which is it has berries and it has flowers for nectar. So I think, but also when you have a garden, be small or large, you need to try and, in some ways, doesn't necessarily need to be all native, non-natives, but have a sort of tier where you've got herbaceous, grassy things, shrubs, and trees. So you're creating different habitats for different creatures. Even keeping bits of soil or mounds free enable things like, because a lot of wasps are actually burying, wasps and bees actually bury underground. So things like that. So there's, again, go on the website, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that on our website that gives you a way of how to garden for wildlife. But if you put any form of small amount of water, and you can do this on balconies as well. I've seen some mates do it. They used a little washing up bowl, and just things appear. So yeah, I think it's just the diversity within that is. Hopefully that answers your question.
That's great. So I've got another question, which is lovely. Is there a scientific reason why some people have more of an affinity and need to be in nature than others? I crave it every day. And maybe because I'm a farmer's daughter is what they're saying. Yeah, is that, it's the nurture nature.
It's a really interesting one. So and also, I mean, I think I'm with you there. If I had to move and live in the city, and I had to get out, I just couldn't. I wasn't surviving, and often I'd find myself confused in a garden centre just to be surrounded by nature, and I do think there is this element of affinity. I think the more you work with it and the more you're exposed to it, the more passionate. But what we're going to do, because we've created a wellbeing garden at the Hilltop Home of Garden Science, and
which is in Wisley.
Yeah, it's in
RHS
Surrey. It was just opened a couple of weeks ago. And what I'm interested in doing is actually, because I'm exposed to green space. I've been since the age of 4. Am I less immune to, or does my reactions of stress and stuff, is it a less element of restoration than if, say, in a city with someone who's never had contact with nature? So what we're going to be doing as an experiment is we're going to be stressing people out and then using nature to restore them in a managed way, and then see how quickly people restore. And I do think because some elements of nature. So my wife, for example, she was a city girl from London. I took her down to Cornwall because I worked at Eden Project for some time. And well, the first day I remember we drove up to his farm, and I said, stop the car. Because on the left-hand side, there was an owl, which I was like, this is amazing. She was going, I thought someone was being murdered. And it's like, so I think there are differences, and it's about what you know. And actually, it can be quite stressful. My wife lived in Cornwall for 10 years, and now she loved it. So I think if there was ever an opportunity of city people moving to the country and country people moving to the city for a spell, I think we'd have a much better understanding, and also learning how to react in nature. I often see it as well in inner city places. Certainly near urban areas, is that what a lot of people will do is they'll drive their car to nature in a car park. They'll get out their car, open up their boot and put the chairs just at the boot, because I think a lot of people are nervous about that. So it can be quite an anxious place, nature. But again, the garden or a park or a public green space is a step towards that, where you can then amazingly get fascinated. Although I think the sea helps with some stuff because it makes it feel safe, although the sea's quite a treacherous place at times. But
but you can stay on the beach, can't you?
I think, and there's ice creams and things. And
I know when my daughter was younger, she spent a lot of time in nature climbing trees. She loved climbing trees. And whenever she was wound up or stressed, I would do everything I could to get her back into the woods. Just because she would just calm and people feel more relaxed.
I've talked to quite a number of clinicians who have sort of homes with people with dementia and Alzheimer's and people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And, when people are having certain episodes, they will take them into the garden and they will calm down very quickly. Not everyone. And again, I think this is it. I think it's like the farm girl there, you loved it, you were in it, and you enjoyed it, and you got a deeper understanding because you probably spent a lot of time maybe lying down just watching. I mean, I spent hours collecting frogs, hours. It was a wasted youth from 4 to 15. But actually, I think it is really quite important that, and I think what the worry I had, certainly before COVID, one of the things that COVID has done, because we've got 3 million more gardeners than we had before COVID started.
Interesting.
And one of the things I think that I was worried about was that people were getting this term, Love talked about nature deficit disorder. So the last child in the woods, because people are they're still on their iPhones and stuff. But a lot of people, again, our animal calling, particularly if you have a loss or whatever, you tend to seek out nature. It's just innate within us. But unfortunately, in cities, not everyone has that space. So certainly one of the things we're trying to call for is that, the sentence is really everyone, it should be a right to have a space to grow. Be it indoors, all right. Be it like this, or be it like a very small garden, or be it whatever people can afford.
One of the things that if I'm teaching storytelling is I'll ask both adults and children to go and observe something. So a spider making a web, or a little ant running, or a colony of ants, or a blade of grass, or whatever. And I ask them to just look at it, smell it, see it, touch it. And it's incredible what that does to the imagination, what that does to storytelling, how that allows us to tell a story in a much more profound way. So it's really interesting, the senses in nature. We do blindfold walks where you have one person leading another. And if you go and stand, I mean, you've probably done this, if you stand on the grass or on pebbles without your shoes on, blindfolded, and walk between grass and then gravel and then pavement, it's an amazing experience. Really.
Yeah, I've not done that. I have walked bare feet on grass and things, and I think there is a it's one of the things that I'm really quite interested in, is that one of the biggest human organs is the skin.
Yeah.
And we don't really look at that. We know, for example, so one of an experiment I think would be really fun is that there's been an experiment where they've stroked dogs. And as you stroke dogs, your levels of serotonin increase.
Yeah.
I wonder if you're having that experience of walking through grass, whether that would be a similar thing. Or
I wonder.
And it might not be for everyone, but I certainly do this. If I walk past the whispery grass, I just have to get hold of it and give it a little bit of a stroke.
Yes.
So does stroking a grass have the same effect as stroking a dog? And if so, should we be putting more strokey grasses in our gardens to help with areas when we're stressed out? So I think, the tactile touch, but also I think that connection with nature, because once you're touching something, again, your mind is thinking, that's a soft grass, I'm touching this, and it wanders off. And I think that's the thing. It's switching off what is termed the executive brain, which is going, oh, I've got the kids to feed, I've got to go to school, I've got to do the work, I've got this system report, oh, butterfly.
Yes.
And no matter what you do, there's not many people that won't be distracted by that thing. I mean, there'll be some, but even at Hampton Court, I was getting butterflies flying on my thing.
Oh, beautiful.
Red admirals and stuff, and going, because Hampton Court then becomes like a nightclub for pollinators when it comes to, it's just neck to heaven during that week.
Wow.
And they flock in. So I think it's basically, it's exactly what you're saying. The more people that can feel confident and want to reconnect back, but it can't be preached. I think this is a challenge with, as scientists often see a scene as being preachy, but actually we're quite creative. All we really want is to try and share how beautiful this stuff is. And science for me makes it more beautiful.
And your passion isn't preachy in the slightest. It's so filled. It makes me want to go out and dig in my garden now. Alistair, it's just such a pleasure to talk to you and to hear, the science, as you say, makes it so much more interesting. I promised we would finish at past, and I know that you've had such a long day. You probably deserve to go and sit in nature for a while. But thank you so much, Alistair, and thank you to the RHS for supporting this conversation, and to the audience who are listening and asking questions this evening. And I know that many, many more people will come to it and watch it once it's on, watch again. If anybody would like any more information about Alistair's book, where's the best place, Alistair, to point them for that?
I mean, just if you type in Alistair Griffiths, RHS Your Wellbeing Garden, it'll pop up. There's all sorts of independent book retailers as well as the usual others.
So your Wellbeing Garden. And then if anybody would like any more information or to buy one of our Secret Garden experiences, which includes this, the first episode of which you can listen to free, and when you buy the experience you then get a key, which if you have a child or somebody like me who's very childlike, you could hide it for them in the garden or in nature for them to find, and then there's a code which they can type in to access the online once you've spent lots of time in nature. And Alistair, you'll be delighted to hear that one of the envelopes Don't listen to anyone who doesn't want to know this. One of the envelopes contains sunflower seeds.
Yay. Excellent.
So you can share. Yes.
There we go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure. That's it.
Brilliant.
Have a great evening.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.